Greetings, friend, and welcome to the Between the Covers podcast, where we are working every day to remove the self-limiting beliefs that are preventing us from becoming the heroes of our own stories. I am Marcus Spar, and today we are going to continue talking about purity culture, and one of the things that I heard quite a bit growing up, and I'm curious if it's something that maybe you have heard, is the notion of obligation when we're talking about sex. Now, before we get too deep in here, I do just want to remind you that this can be a rather difficult topic, and it's not going to harm my feelings even one bit if you have to skip this episode or you have to pause and come back to it later. I encourage you to listen to and trust your body on what it is that is going to be the safest and healthiest thing for you to do as we continue to remove the veil on this oftentimes very traumatic experience that many of us grew up with. Because the nature of purity culture is to be shaming about the notion of sex and sexuality, what I have often seen is a belief that most of the time women need to have sex with their husbands solely for the purpose of obligation so that they do not lose themselves in pornography or trying to have affairs with anyone else. It's very unfortunate because there is one scripture in particular that is often used as a weapon to cudgel a lot of Christian women into having their opinions or even their desire for sex just outright removed from the equation. And this is coming from the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7. In fact, the book of 1 Corinthians has a lot to say about sex in general. And what it says here, starting at verse 3, is the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. What makes this problematic is how I have heard and I have known people who have essentially been told by their husband that you need to have sex with me, your body belongs to me, and they completely forget the other half of those two verses, that his body also belongs to her, that he needs to fulfill her sexual needs. One of the things that is caused by this more obligational view of sex that has come from purity culture is what's known as the orgasm gap. And this is pretty staggering if you take a look at the statistics here. Research indicates that less than 30% of women will experience an orgasm during sexual activity that involves a man, whereas men, over 90%, usually do experience an orgasm. Now, I have seen some anecdotal evidence about this over the years, and a large contributing factor that I have seen comes from the idea that the whole purpose of sex is to satisfy the man. And it is something that we have seen throughout history. The focus of sex if you think of sex, and this was something I thought about sex when I was younger, is sex is just penis in vagina. A man has an erection, he inserts his penis into a woman's vagina, or what is also known as PIV sex. And this was one of those things that when I was growing up, I was like, okay, that's that is how I maintain my virginity, is by making sure that my penis does not go into a woman's vagina at all. But everything else was kind of on the table in terms of porn and masturbation and anything like that. Granted, I only ever had one girlfriend before I met Libby, and we were not very active sexually at all. But there are a lot of people that do engage in more than just this penis and vagina kind of sexual activity. And as we are talking about this, I have just heard so many stories from some men that I've worked with about how they will ask their wife for sex. And for one thing, they're afraid of being rejected. A lot of these men do have unwanted sexual behavior in their lives that their wives are aware of. And this harms the trust between these couples. And yet, there are a lot of women who are told, and all you have to do is listen to people tell stories of going to their pastors or their faith leaders and say that a woman discovers that her husband is looking at pornography. What often is told is, well, are you making yourself sexually available? Are you meeting your husband's sexual needs? And this turns into this dynamic where women, or these wives, are having to essentially turn into sexual outlets for their husbands, which is not a healthy thing either. Because sex is so much more than that. It is so much more than just this PIV sexual experience. This is something that I had to learn over the years that I've been married to my partner Libby. It is a lot of work. And with some of my research that I was doing online, oh my word, I can't believe some of the articles I was reading from Christian authors about sex, just trying to cobble some of this together here. What I saw were men who were saying that it was just too much effort and it was too hard to devote the time for getting these women to reach a sexual orgasm, to climax sexually. And this is one of the things that causes this orgasm gap. It does take time. And that's where play comes in. I have heard many, many times that one of the things that is so important in a sexual relationship is the foreplay. It's something that builds up the excitement. It helps both men and women to feel connected, to find that arousal. It helps men and women both explore what is pleasing, what is arousing, and ultimately how they can, in some cases, even verbalize what their partner can do. And this is something that oftentimes doesn't happen. And one of the reasons why it doesn't happen is because purity culture has taught a lot of us to feel shame around our bodies and around sex in general. There are stories of women out there who have only ever experienced pain when they are engaging in sex because of the shame that they hold in their body and the trauma that they have experienced over the years from things like purity culture, from, some people have experienced very similar indicators of sexual abuse, even though there has been no outright sexual abuse done against these women. But purity culture can have that same level of impact. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I learned about pelvic floor exercises. And these are exercises that can be done in order to loosen up muscles and to make sexual activity much more pleasurable because it removes a lot of that pain. But when you grow up in a culture that tells you that you have to be incredibly careful about what you wear because you're going to make men stumble. You have to be very careful about how you speak and how you interact with people because men are going to get the wrong message. Again, as I shared in the first episode of this series, a lot of men, and myself included, were effectively taught that we were voracious beasts that could not control our sexuality. And the ownership of that was left on women. It was left on girls. They had to dress appropriately. They had to even sit in a way as to a man not even being able to suggest that there was something provocative about it. I heard a story of someone who was going to a Christian camp as a teenager and had to be up incredibly early in order to attend these daily meetings that the counselors and leaders had to be a part of. And it was this 15-year-old teenager, and she goes to one of these meetings and was outright ridiculed by one of the leaders because she was there wearing pajama bottoms. Pajama bottoms that were full length and issued by the camp for everyone to wear. And everyone else there was wearing pajama bottoms, or most of the people there were still wearing their pajama bottoms. But because she was a girl, it was going to make people think, it was going to make the men picture her in bed. And that's something that is taboo. It's not something that women should allow men to do. And notice, a lot of this doesn't even give the ownership of what's going on to the men. Because how often do you hear comments that, oh, boys will just be boys? No, too many men have been given way too much leeway and freedom to just give in to these unhealthy desires and behaviors to the point, oh my gosh, I'm just going down so many tangents here, but I remember hearing of a pastor, this was several months ago now, I don't even remember the pastor's name, but he said from his pulpit, he was condemning this one woman who was sexually abused by a man. And he said that because of the way that she was dressed, if he was one of the people if he was a member of the jury, he would say that the man was not guilty of his crime because the woman was essentially asking for it. Oh, that is the bullshit that comes from purity culture. Now, just going to shake off that disgusting, ugly muck. And let's go back to the topic at hand here. Sex is not something that should ever be obligatory. It's something that should be filled with play and fun. It is an incredible way for not just a man and a woman, but just people in general to experience not just these wonderful sensations that come from the sexual activity, but also the incredible intimacy that comes with it. Now, I do just want to specify all of the examples that I was giving before. They were talking in terms of heterosexual marriages or relationships because, again, that's what purity culture teaches us is what's normal. However, I also know that my homosexual friends have very fulfilling and wonderful sexual relationships. And I'm not so naive to think that that isn't happening. When we're talking about play instead of obligation, a big thing is consent. Because a lot of times when sex is an obligation, it's almost like forced consent for usually one partner because they feel like they have to. And I have often heard from some of my friends that a lot of heterosexual couples can learn so much from queer couples about consent because they have these conversations quite regularly. And they're always making sure that whatever is going on, everyone is on board. And this can be something that is very exciting. It's something that can bring about a new sense of adventure in terms of this kind of sexual engagement. And I can tell you personally, and I hope this is something that Libby's not going to be terribly upset about because I didn't ask her permission beforehand, but she has attested that whenever she has essentially acted as if she has had a sexual climax, that it has been real. I cannot tell you the number of times I have heard of women that effectively have to pretend as if they're having an orgasm, but they're not actually experiencing anything. They're just faking it. That's not fun. That's not enjoyable. And play is a lot more than just what happens in the bedroom where the sex is taking place. And that is assuming that the sex is taking place in a bedroom. I understand that that's not how it is for everyone. Play is something that can take place hours or even days before. It is something where you can just give these little subtle hints that you're interested in the person, that you find them attractive, that you adore them. I know that for Libby, one of the things is she loves the physical touch. Physical touch is super important for her, along with words of affirmation. And going back to one of the stereotypes that I have often heard just around sex in general is that for most men, they want to be sexually intimate with someone in order to be emotionally connected to them. Or that's the way that they emotionally connect with someone. However, for a lot of women, they want to be emotionally connected before they engage in sexual activity. I can't tell you the number of people that I've talked with that have had to wrestle with that wonderful dichotomy, and it can still work. I know that for Libby, I can just give her a hug. I can just squeeze her. I can hold her hand. I can rub her shoulders. I can stroke her legs or her feet. I can just stroke her chin, run my fingers through her hair. And these are things that make her feel good. And it's also something that can be, and oftentimes is, foreplay. Especially if we're on the same page that this is what we're striving for. And we can look at sex as a lot of these men do, that it's work. They have to commit or devote the time and the strain, the stress, the mental fortitude and physical fortitude to be able to make this happen. And again, just stereotypically speaking, it seems men can reach an orgasm significantly faster than most women can. And there have been some people that I've worked with that we have had conversations about this, and it's like as soon as the man has orgasmed, it's like they're pretty much done. They've checked out. And that is so unfortunate. So unfortunate, because it doesn't have to be that way. Now, I only have my life experience and stories that I've heard from others to kind of corroborate all of this. Corroborate, whatever the word is. However, I have experienced, in fact, probably more times than not. Actually, I know more times than not that I have reached a climax sexually before Libby has. And when that happens, I am still there, I am still present, I am still putting in the effort to help Libby experience the same thing that I did. And there is something to be said about the level of joy that you can receive when your partner achieves an orgasm as well. And this is all about play. This is all about having sex, instead of being an obligation, be something that you can use to explore yourself and your partner and absolutely delight in each other. Have fun with it. It is, in fact, I would even say for a lot of adults, it's maybe even one of the only ways that they, quote, have fun, really. In this world where we are so spread thin and so much is being demanded of us, and we have to keep putting in more and more time to just get like the same amount of money as we used to get before, all of these things, they have an impact on our ability to enjoy life, to have fun, to connect with people. And we can still find the time and the energy, and sometimes you even need to plan it, in order to have this fun sexual experience with someone that you love and adore. Let's talk about one of the other stigmas that seems to come up a lot as we are looking over, I guess, the modern sex life, is a lot of people, and I think this is thanks to a lot of media out there, that sex is something that is spontaneous. It needs to be spontaneous in order for it to be the magical thing that everyone expects it to be. Nope. In fact, I even remember having a conversation with my dental hygienist. This was years ago, as we were talking about like anti-snoring devices and things like that, where it's like, you know what? Just kind of waking up in bed and spontaneously having sex with your partner isn't really as glamorous as most people make it think, or make you think, and most people make it appear, because I have to get up and I have to take out my snore guard. I probably have to brush my teeth because my breath smells horrible first thing in the morning. Spontaneity eh, it's not really all that it's cut out to be. It can be fun, don't get me wrong. It can be fun, it can be surprising, it can really bring out that arousal. But I also know of a lot of people that make it a point to plan out the time within a week of what's going to work out best according to their schedules. If you have kids, it's really hard to be spontaneous. If you are if you are so busy with working different shifts compared to your partner, and it's almost like you guys are just ships passing in the ocean, it can be really hard to be spontaneous. And that is where you can legitimately plan ahead, and turn that into some of the foreplay. I have heard these incredible stories of people who have worked out with their partner that, okay, we're going to plan to be sexually intimate on this day. And then, say that it's like a Thursday or something like that. Then it's like Monday. Start sending some flirtatious texts. Just being like, you know what, I'm really looking forward to Thursday. I'm really looking forward to connecting with you. I am excited for what we are planning. And that can start to build up some of that sexual tension and that arousal, and it turns into foreplay. And it's not something you have to do the day of, it's something you can do leading up to it. I know that for me in particular, whenever I have been sexually active with Libby, I tend to get pretty handsy afterwards. And she's just come to expect that. And you know what? It's still giving her that touch as one of her big love languages. I can't tell you how many times I will just come up and just give her a hug, and then 5 minutes later I'm going back into her office to give her another one. And I'm just like, I just can't get enough of you right now. That's the level of connection that can come from this incredibly wonderful experience. And this is something that is missed if the sex is just about obligation. If it's just about meeting the sexual need of one partner. That's why I encourage play over obligation. Make it something that is enjoyable. Make it something that is fun. And make it something that is not filled with shame. Again, purity culture has taught so much about shame. Shame of our sexuality, shame of our bodies, shame of other people's bodies. None of this has been really helpful to us. It is something that has actually caused a lot of harm. It has put, to a certain degree, unrealistic expectations upon so many people. And the number of stories that I keep hearing about these spiritual leaders who are saying that you need to, how do they put it, not defile the marriage bed and not to commit adultery. And these are some of the people that are committing those same atrocities with other people, with complete strangers, with people who are within their spiritual organization, someone that they have power over, someone that they are manipulating and grooming. It's insane. And that is where we see purity culture leading us. It's leading us and it's leaving us. We are being left in a world that just lifts up sexual predators. I mean, I remember during the elections how many people would point out some of these sexual atrocities that President Trump had committed. And that didn't seem to bother a lot of these Christians because he was being very manly, he was being very masculine. because we live in a very phallocentric world where the whole focus is on the man. The whole focus is on the penis and the pleasure that is derived from that, and not much else. And a lot of this comes down to obligation, because this whole thing about sex being an obligation, especially between heterosexual couples, is that the man has sexual needs and the woman needs to meet those needs. Because if she doesn't, the man is going to go and have an affair, is going to look at pornography, is going to engage in an emotional affair, or go out and like look for a sex worker or call some adult chat line or something like that. And the man isn't the one being blamed. It's the woman. Because she wasn't doing enough to meet his sexual needs. And again, that kind of obligatory sex, what's it do? It just turns people into sexual outlets for someone else. That is not healthy. That is not good. That is not going to be fulfilling for anyone. And so remove the obligation and have fun with it as it was meant to be. It was meant to be a bonding experience between two people. It's meant to be something that is mutually pleasurable. It's not supposed to be one-sided. And have fun with it. I oftentimes think of one of the things that I have heard and said in my friend group quite often is that we don't kink shame, but we do kink ask questions. Because there's a lot of times people have these certain things that they want to do sexually that to them are pleasurable and is fun, but because of the stigma that it's something that's kinky and it's taboo or whatever it is, I'm not here to judge that. That's not my responsibility. I don't want to judge someone else's sex life any more than I want someone else to judge my sex life with Libby. That's none of their business. Libby and I are going to do what works for us. You can do what works for you. You can do what works for you and your partner or partners. And so long as everyone is consenting and enjoying what is going on, then have fun and play. Enjoy this incredibly wonderful experience that can just connect you intimately to people that are important to you. As we wrap up here, I will remind you that if you have had some of these difficult or challenging experiences with purity culture, I am happy to help you however I can. Feel free to get in touch with me, set up a free 1-hour call to see how I can help you and if we're going to be a good fit. And I encourage you to give this video a like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please rate this podcast on Spotify, on Apple, or wherever it is that you listen. Please rate 5 stars. And I am looking forward to talking with you again next week as we dive into the topic of love and lust. And until next time, live strong for today.